Hi everyone. Today we're going to talk about my emotion notes that I posted for you. And so we're going to go through a lecture with this material that is not found in the textbook. But it is an important and essential component of emotion, and the authors of your textbook don't really cover it in depth. So we want to go ahead and do that because it plays such a key role, our ability to manage emotions and express them effectively, and to know when and with whom to do that, as was mentioned in self-disclosure. So at the top of your handout on page 1, you will see some basic concepts about emotion. There's first a reminder that we talked early in the semester about the dimensions of every message, which is a content and relational dimension. So the content, right, is explicitly conveyed, right? That's the information that you find in the message itself. But the relational dimension expresses how you feel about the other person to whom you are communicating, right? So if someone said you can buy that for less online, it doesn't really gain as much meaning until you add that relational dimension. Let's say perhaps one of my teenage kids here at home were to say it, they might say it maybe something like this: we could buy that for less online, right? The dimension being that, right, teenagers often seem to know more than their parents, right? That's kind of that attitude that would be there. But if you were trying to be helpful with someone and save them money, you say a friend of yours, you could say it differently, such with a nonverbal, right? Which is, you can buy that for less online, right? So remember, nonverbal is extremely important in conveying that relational dimension. It's primarily relational in nature. All right. So another term is EQ, or emotional intelligence. And this is the ability to understand and manage one's own emotions and be sensitive to other people's feelings as well. And it is vital to success, as I say, to communication and a healthy relationship, no matter really what kind of relationship it is. Being able to understand how what you say is going to affect someone possibly is important. Does that mean that you're supposed to refrain from saying something that might hurt the person? Well, no, that's not what we're saying. But we are saying, if you want a healthy relationship, that you're going to have to be able to understand, let's say even in a business, and during this pandemic that we're experiencing, for example, people's emotions are relatively high at times, and it's easy for someone to perceive something that's communicated in the wrong way, because we're kind of somewhat on the defensive sometimes. So we can see that, knowing that we can adjust our communication accordingly. All right, so remember, nonverbal behavior is better at expressing emotion, conveying that emotional side, and therefore the relational dimension. All right, so look at some 4 components that affect how you feel, and therefore, because it affects how you feel, it does affect your communication with other people in different relationships and contexts. So one factor is physiological factors, such as those things that happen. This includes the things that happen internally. These are the things such as your blood pressure, right? If you have if high blood pressure, for example, can occur more often with things, feelings such as anger, right? Heart rate, same thing. Blood sugar, slow digestion, dilation of pupils. So all of these physiological factors come into play, and they can actually kind of affect each other. In other words, if you are having it can be often a signal that you're experiencing intense emotion while you might be denying the fact that it's there. So recognizing those things is key in kind of helping us recognize what we're feeling. So nonverbal reactions are another thing that happen. These are external. These are the things that other people can see, right? Such as sweating, blushing, change in posture, right? If someone closes up their body, right, and holds on to themselves, they're in a defensive posture. So that's going to again be related to emotions. Yeah, these are components, not necessarily one causes, but these are things that we can see and understand, right? So it does affect, and I do want to say this, I have in italics there, that we can react non-verbally to our emotions, but also if you move in certain ways, for example, if you start to pace rapidly, it can actually create some emotion, some nervousness. So, it's just something to keep in mind, that when you move a certain way, or if you sit up super straight, excuse me, if you sit up super straight and rigid, it can actually kind of produce a different kind of feeling. If you get all relaxed and that, you can actually have a different, more relaxed feeling from it. So they kind of do, cause effect can go back and forth with all of these things. Cognitive interpretations, and this is maybe the most important thing that we talk about, other than the actual verbal expression of emotion, is that the mind plays an important role in determining our emotional states. For example, right, if you're about to give a speech, as I say here, your heart's pounding, right, and all of that. If you can put this in perspective and realize lots of things that I would tell students. I would tell them things like, if you just put it in perspective, realize it's only like 2 minutes out of your entire life, realize that everybody in the class is in the same boat, realize hopefully that you know the material and that you're confident about it. All of those things can help. In other words, instead of saying, oh my gosh, I'm going to be in front of all these people, I don't know what I'm going to say, the more you can feed that emotion of nervousness. So instead you want to rethink it and reappraise it, which we're going to talk about. That the fight or flight response in something like a speech, which we've talked about before, right, is an overreaction. And it just produces stronger, more intense emotions that are detrimental to you being able to do your best. So, putting it in perspective is a form of what we call reappraisal, rethinking it. You're rethinking these emotionally charged events in ways that can alter their emotional impact. Now, look, when you're going through something, let's say, even, the pandemic circumstances, but other things such as divorce, or an illness or death in the family, it's difficult to put that in perspective at the time because it's too intense, and it's perhaps lasting a long time, which we're going to be talking about that. But when it's something, again, more minor in the moment, something that if you can reappraise it, rethink it, and say, okay, now let me just put this in perspective. Okay, so this one person said something demeaning to me, but you reappraise it and you think about why the person's behaving this way, and you think about actually what it really means to you. Does it really matter? You can, right, online communication is filled with lots of negative comments. Some of them are very positive comments, but again, if you don't know these people, and if they aren't close friends of yours, then you have to reappraise it and say, well, what does it really matter? Why is that bothering me? Right? So you rethink it. It's not about denying the fact you're having the emotions. You want to recognize what you're actually feeling. That's important. Don't deny them. Recognize them and decide then what you can do with it, right? So that you can have, it's not just about being a positive outlook. It's more about saying, how is this useful to me? How can I benefit from this? How can my relationships benefit from me looking at this in a different way? So again, sometimes close people, family members, might lash out at each other in circumstances that are very difficult. But if you put it in perspective, right? And you reappraise it. Those hurting words don't have to hurt as much because you may understand where it's coming from and the fact that you're all dealing with whatever the problem is. All right, so verbal expression is important too. Now, many scholars will say, there's 4 basic emotions, but you'll find some that might say 7 or 11. And it doesn't really matter what those basic emotions are. In this case, we're looking at anger, joy, fear, and sadness. The idea being that any other emotions are different levels or gradations of those 4. And I think that you can make a case for that. But again, and this is across all cultures. So, what we need to do is increase our emotional vocabulary, and I will make sure that you have a document or a web link that will give you some ideas about those possibilities. I mean, there's many ways to describe what you're feeling. For example, you can be angry, but that anger may come from, there's a difference between anger and rage and irritation. Right? Those are all forms or gradations, I guess, of anger. Fear can be communicated in lots of ways. Fear, worry is a little different, but it's based on fear. Even jealousy is an emotion that comes from fear, right? So there's quite a few different levels of each of these. And I think, again, even with sadness, if you say you're sad, if you say you're grieved, to me, grieved is deeper and stronger. Depressed, right? So there's lots of different words, and we want to increase our vocabulary. Why? Because, again, going back to chapter 2, verbal communication, choosing the best possible fit for your emotions is important in the relationship. When you're choosing to express an emotion, you want to target it as precisely as you can. And sometimes that's difficult. Sometimes it's hard to figure out exactly what you're feeling, but you can also explore that in your communication with another person that's close to you. So because we don't talk about our emotions to everyone, and we don't talk about them all the time, and we don't have to express the emotion that we feel. If we did that, again, that would not be a healthy thing to do, to express all the feelings that we have. But when it is important, when you need to identify what it is, then you've got to be able to have that vocabulary. All right. So we're kind of building on these things we talked about earlier with the idea of perception, right? As far as when expressing feelings. So I'm going to come back to that. All right. So you've got to be able to put it into words as precisely as possible. And even if you're just searching for those words, it's better to make that effort for the sake of a relationship. All right. Because you can become socially isolated if you don't communicate these feelings to someone. You could have relationships that aren't satisfying, again, because you feel it puts a barrier between you and the other person to whom you're close, or anxiety, right? Because the feeling that people don't understand what you're feeling and what you're going through. Depression, right? Or misdirected aggression, which is something that bubbles out or bursts out because you aren't recognizing those feelings. You aren't recognizing them, putting them in perspective, rethinking them, and communicating them to those that need to have that understanding of what you're going through. All right. So page 2. These are some influences on emotional expression. Again, there's some overlap with things that we've talked about before. Personality, again, going back to your environment from the transactional model of communication in chapter 1, right? This is part of who we are, is our personality. And people who are more extroverted, right, more outgoing, that sort of thing, they have a tendency to be more upbeat and optimistic, enjoy more social contact, and report more positive emotions. than less extroverted individuals. Is that, a problem? No, it's just something to recognize a difference. The more extroverted you are, the more often the research says you're going to be optimistic and upbeat. If you are, it doesn't really, looking in doesn't really specify anything about introversion. But it does know if you're neurotic. That doesn't mean introverts are neurotic. Anybody can be neurotic. Neurotic personalities are those who tend to worry and to feel anxious. All right, report more negative emotions in everyday life than less neurotic individuals, because again, you're kind of living with this fear. It becomes a debilitative emotion, which we're going to look at. What is a debilitative emotion versus facilitative emotion? Because there is nothing wrong with any emotion that you could possibly feel. That you just have to own it and examine it and realize that that is a part of what is you and what you're feeling. It's honest, and absolutely nothing wrong, and important that we don't dismiss or minimize our own emotions or those of others, right? It is extremely important. So, and they have found, and I could find the information for you if you needed me to, but there was a study that I had heard of last fall, I believe it was, about that they have found a genetic link to people who are more predisposed to worry, and they're probably going to find more and more of these things, right, as we learn scientifically what affects our personality. All right, so those are just a couple of things about personality, but you can examine your own personality and think about, what are the tendencies that I have? Do I have anything that I get kind of, we're going to talk about rumination. Did I dwell on too much? Is there something negative that I tend to dwell on, right? Okay, culture, all right, definitely has an effect on how we express emotion. When we look at people in individualistic or low context, which has direct communication, which the United States is a part of that, share emotions only with those who are very close to us, those who are close to us. All right. So, when we look at that, and the people in the collectivist, high context, right, and those who like indirect communication, those cultures, it's fine to express emotion, but they discourage any negative sharing. In other words, they don't appreciate the sharing of, say, things like anger, right, sadness, and anything negative. Why? Because remember, high context cultures prioritize, right, harmony. So sharing of negative emotions, the expressing of those would be considered detrimental to that harmony in a relationship. All right. Gender, we'll be looking at gender some more in chapter 7. But women across all cultures, many studies have shown that women are more attuned to emotions than men across all cultures, and more likely to express their feelings. And I think that many of us know this from experience. Are there differences? Are there some men that would disclose more than others? Yes, there are, because we don't all fit into some kind of cookie cutter, polarized situation. So a lot of this can also depend on your upbringing, right? So it just depends on many factors. But generally speaking, many more women, right? Many more women are attuned to emotions than men across all cultures, and express them. They're more likely to do that. And this probably has to do with, many things. And there's nothing that has pinpointed exactly what those things are. But as again, we'll kind of talk about more in chapter 7. Part of that may be due to brain structure, in that women have emotion centers on both sides of the brain, whereas men is just one side of the brain. And women have verbal centers on both sides of the brain, right? Instead, and they also have more communication between the two hemispheres of the brain. So there's a lot of activity that includes those emotions and wanting to talk about them. So again, there's not a right or a wrong or a good or a bad. They're just differences. They're just differences to realize, and we'll look more about that, as I said, in chapter 7. Okay, and social conventions. One of the things that I want to talk about here is called emotion labor. Emotion labor. And what this has to do with is that in the workplace, it is expected in our culture that we do not share negative feelings, particularly. We do not, we discourage any sharing of feelings, but the positive ones are okay. But we definitely don't encourage the sharing of negative emotion in the workplace. It's called emotion labor. Why? Because it's hard work. First of all, it takes place in the workplace, and it's hard work to not be able to do that sometimes. But it is expected that we kind of stay more emotionally neutral or on the positive side. That's definitely encouraged to be positive. All right, social media. We've already talked about this in class before, and how emotions are expressed very intensely online and more freely online, and more openly. People are disinhibited. And sometimes it has cost them quite a bit to do those things, sometimes even their jobs. So we want to be careful with expressing emotion on social media. That's just something to be reflecting on and thinking about. Emotional contagion. And I would say I guess the jury's still out on social media and how it's affecting us. But I think that we'll see that when people share sincere, honest, positive feelings, it is beneficial. But when people share negative messages in a way that is meant to tear people down, ego busters, that it is highly detrimental. Emotional contagion is the idea that we can catch the feelings of other people around us. And we need to realize that we can catch other people's feelings and that they can catch ours. Now, we can catch positive feelings, all right? We can catch positive feelings as well as negative feelings. And it's the negative ones that we need to watch out for. It's great if you want to spread happiness and joy. That's a good thing, right? We all want to feel positive. That's everyone wants that kind of satisfaction. But the negative ones are a problem. If you look at the cartoon from the New Yorker, I believe it is, but it's online. You can see the husband and wife saying, right? And it's hard to say exactly which one is speaking. It looks like the man is speaking. I'm not in one of my moods. I'm in one of your moods, which means they have caught the negative mood. If you've ever gotten up in the morning and thought, I'm going to attack this day, and it's going to be great. I'm going to get this done, and this done, and this done. And it's going to be wonderful. And then somebody else in the family gets up, and they have a super negative mood. They're right, and you may try to fight it for a while, but eventually, guess what? You're going to catch it, most likely. Hopefully, you can turn the tables and turn them into help them to have a more positive mood, let them catch yours. It seems like it's easier to catch the negative ones. So we want to remember that. We want to remember that as communicators too, because, maybe we just need to address what created the mood in this to start with, or at least reappraise and think, okay, I don't need to send this out to everybody in my family. I need to deal with it. I need to do whatever I need to recognize what I'm feeling, why I think I'm feeling that way, right? Examine it and express that specifically if I need to, rather than setting people up to catch a bad mood, as they say. All right, so page 3. We're going to talk about managing emotions. And first we want to look at these two categories that I mentioned earlier, which is facilitative emotion and debilitative emotion. Facilitative emotion will contribute to effective communication, effective functioning, which that means you're able to go about your life, to be productive, right, and to have satisfying relationships because of how you're feeling and how you're dealing with what you're feeling. So that's facilitative. So if you reappraise a negative emotion, and you rethink that and reframe it, then in a way that will benefit you, then that is facilitative. Okay, it doesn't all have to be, happy, joy, those things. It can be what you do with your anger. It can be what you do with your fear or your worry, right? So, and debilitative is detracts from your effective function. You're not going to be able to function well if it becomes debilitative. So, we're talking about those negative emotions, all right? And obviously that's going to affect your communication. All right, so debilitative emotions are negative emotions, and they're distinguished. It becomes debilitative based on these two characteristics, okay? Because look, negative feelings we don't enjoy those. We want them to go away, generally speaking. So when this emotion, because there's nothing wrong with any emotion that you feel, absolutely nothing wrong with an emotion that you feel. But if it is too intense, right, intensity, and the duration is too long, right, it becomes more debilitative, right? So intense emotion, if you're angry, well, let's just think, if you're enraged and it lasts for a long time, imagine how debilitative that's going to be. You could even suffer a heart attack. It's been, anger's been linked to stroke and heart attacks. So, I mean, you have to get that under control, and you don't do it by denying it, okay? You do it by recognizing it, and rethinking, reappraising that emotion, all right? So rumination, right, is the term that we bring in here, because rumination is where you're dwelling persistently on negative thoughts and feelings, right? Those negative thoughts intensify the negative feelings. The more you think, I'm going to fail, I guess feel horrible, I'm just scared, I don't know what I'm going to do, I'm so frightened about what's happening to me, and it lasts for a long time, and it's intense. It's going to decrease your ability to function well, to function effectively, to communicate effectively, all right? And I'm not saying people don't, most of us get there at some point in our lives, many times maybe, but it's more about how you, again, start rethinking it instead of ruminating, right, on those, and thinking these negative thoughts, right, and that turns into negative feelings, and it just kind of feeds each other. So, here's some sources of debilitative emotion that can happen, right? Our physiology, we kind of mentioned before, but this is what our genetic makeup, like I said, there's a worry gene apparently, how shy you are, those are all things that are rooted in, right, heredity. So there's a lot to do there that you simply may have inherited. That's not everything, but it can be an aspect of that. It can be one component of your makeup that does create debilitative emotions, or it has that possibility of debilitative emotions. I can tell you that my mother's always been a worrier. She's gotten so much better about it. And I definitely, some of us siblings have had the same issue. I can't say it never pops up again. For me, it does, but it's much better than it used to be because of how I have learned to cope with it. And other parts that make up who I am, what's important to me, my beliefs, my values, all play a part in that as well. So they do say here too, even aggression can be rooted in biology. And again, chapter 7 will talk about some differences with primarily biological gender that can play a part in that as well. All right, the amygdala, right, is the sentinel of the brain. It's it looks for threats, and sometimes, again, like giving a 2-minute speech, for example, you may not be putting it in proper perspective because your biology here, your amygdala, is saying this is a threat, this is a threat, and so you have all these. It hijacks the brain sometimes and causes you to emotionally overreact. All right. So when there's not a real threat. Okay, so we want to remember that. And again, thinking, your cognitive functioning, rethinking, reappraising will help calm that response down. There are also some physical things you can do. Just slow breathing, like in through your nose and slow exhale through your mouth a few times can actually slow down your respiration some as well. So that's a physical thing that you can do. Emotional memory is somewhat related in that, because that amygdala may come into play if this is going on. But with this, and it may, again, and I'm not going to minimize PTSD in veterans, because that's why I hate to kind of use it in any kind of blanket way. But it can be caused by other things besides combat. Again, it's something that happens in levels and degrees, and I'm sure if you take psychology, you'll get a little more deeper into all of that. But here, we're just kind of looking at this idea of emotional memory and how it might be affecting you and affecting your relationships, therefore, and your communication within those relationships. So this is the idea that this very harmless events somehow trigger these debilitative feelings, even if they have a slight resemblance to troublesome experiences from the past. So if you've had a past that had some very traumatic incidences, there can be something really seemingly harmful. Maybe it's a song that plays on the radio. I mean, it could be, there's nothing wrong with the song, but it's our associations with the song that could be troublesome, right? That can trigger debilitative feelings, right? Okay. So it's kind of, you can start to recognize your triggers with that, and try to, again, reappraise it. So always reappraising, especially when you don't understand where your feelings might be coming from, or if your reactions are overreactions, and think about why that might have happened. It may have triggered an emotional memory. Self-talk, all right? This, how we think, right, as I've been saying, affects how we feel, right? So we want to look at the idea of there's an activating event. Okay, something happens, whether it's something that somebody said to you, something that was done, something that wasn't done, something that, right, any of those kinds of things, but an event, right, an activating or triggering event. Cognitive psychologists, right, argue, as in your handout, it's not the events that cause people to feel bad, right? But rather the beliefs they hold about these events. So let's say, for example, you're in a close, we'll say a marriage, and you find out that your spouse has been cheating on you. Now, it's not, and this is hard sometimes for people to separate, it's not so much just the actual act that a person cheated. It's what you believe, right, about cheating, about what commitment in a marriage means. It's your beliefs about those, about what that act means to you, right? That is going to determine how you feel, right? So if I believe that in a marriage that this shouldn't take place, and how hurtful I think that is, I think marriage should be a monogamous, full commitment that lasts a lifetime, then I'm going to hurt. I'm going to be angry and disappointed, betrayed, or I'm going to have lots of different emotions about that thing. Why? Because of the beliefs I have about that behavior. All right. So it's how people view, right, these acts, that people, whether it's something somebody said, if I think that people should be polite and someone is rude to me, that's going to probably at least irritate me, right? So, and I know what I mean, my beliefs about what that means to be polite to others. All right, so I hope that helps. I mean, it's about that. Now, you can reappraise that. Now, if we go back to that same situation and I reappraise it, all I can say is if in this marriage or the other person cheated, okay, and I'm thinking it through, it again, if I believe that that's a reason to divorce or a reason to just, if I feel like I can stick it out and that, it just depends. I mean, you can reappraise and say, well, I don't know, maybe I'm being too hard on the person. I wouldn't do that personally, but, my reappraisal would come more from, okay, I was hurt, I was betrayed, I was let down, my marriage just disappeared, it's not what I thought it was going to be, and instead of getting hung up on what was lost to me, it's the reappraising is more about, what can I do with this moving forward? My past doesn't determine my future, right? We've learned that before. My past doesn't determine my future. So what can I do with that? How do I reappraise it? So as you work through that, and that's a grieving process, the loss of a relationship, all right, that an important relationship to you, then reappraising, you change your way of thinking. Like, this is not the end of, my ability to have a marriage or my ability to have close relationships. It doesn't mean that. It means, let me look at what went wrong. Was there anything else? Was there something I contributed to it? If there wasn't, that's fine. Leave it behind, right? And even if you have to continue a different relationship with this spouse because you have children, right? You can still do that, but you put it where it belongs, right? And you reappraise that and you say, yeah, this was, I want to do the best I can now, right? I want to still grow as a person. I want to still have healthy relationships, even if it means it's a changed relationship with this other person. And I know that's difficult, and you can't do it when you're in the most intense emotions. Sometimes you have to kind of get through some of that. But the more you can change your way of thinking, not change your values necessarily, okay, but change the way that you're thinking, it can help, okay? All right. So now we want to look at the fallacies, and this is the one that we will do an exercise with. Okay, so again, some of this might overlap with some other ideas we had earlier, but you're never going to have a question where I'm putting those two things together, right? Just think of it as a prism, and we're looking through a different, window in that prism, but it's all the same, all right? Prism. Okay. So, fallacy of perfection. Now, this strictly has to do with communication. Nothing else about perfectionism. We're only looking at this as far as communication is concerned. The fallacy is that if you, in order to be a worthwhile communicator, that you should be able to handle every situation, with complete confidence and skill, no matter what goes on. I can attest to that, and I already have in class before. I'm not a perfect communicator. I've already made mistakes on the video and stumbled around sometimes. But you don't have to be a perfect communicator, because there is no such thing as a perfect communicator. It's more about, right, recognizing, those things that we can change, that we can learn from and do better, and realize that we are going to fail sometimes because we're human. If you get an A in this class, which I hope really everybody does, but if you get an A in this class, does that mean you're going to be a perfect communicator? Well, obviously no, you're not. You're not going to be perfect, because there is no such thing. So we can get down on ourselves sometimes if we think we should be able to handle something better than we did. We should be able to communicate more effectively than we did. But it's just, it just doesn't happen. It can become a stumbling block. It can create debilitative emotions, and that's what all these fallacies have the capability of doing. If we fall for them, is to create debilitative emotion, which becomes a huge stumbling block in your relationships, in your communication in those relationships. Fallacy approval of fallacy of approval, right, is the irrational belief that it's vital to get the approval of everyone. All right, first of all, you're not going to get that. It's some other kind of almost perfectionism. You don't have to have it either. Not everyone's going to approve of you, about different aspects about you. You don't have to have that. Okay, so if you feel nervous, again, think about the public speaking situation. What are you afraid of? I mean, you don't have to have everybody's approval when you speak. Yes, depending on the context, you might, again, you just prepare better, and don't be talking about something you don't know about. All right, so you don't have to have everyone's approval. You don't have to have that, and some people, again, you may have problems with one of these fallacies more than another, or no significant problem with any of them, but just recognize them, because they do lead to debilitative emotion, which is what we want to avoid. All right, fallacy of shoulds. All right, this involves the inability to distinguish, right, between what is and what should be. We don't need to think about what should be. We need to think about what is. Okay, in other words, you've got, well, there should be no rain on weekends, or there should not be a pandemic. Right? I mean, there is a pandemic. We've known there's always been pandemics at different times in history. We know that's going to happen. So just saying it shouldn't be is really just going to frustrate you further. All right. And if you get hung up on this shouldn't be happening, we shouldn't have to do our courses online. We took a campus class. I know how frustrated people are, especially, it's frustrating for me, but I'm more concerned about my students, right? And the fact that they're having to adjust to this, and it's not easy. But if you dwell in this fallacy of shoulds, it just shouldn't be this way, it shouldn't, you can see where you can get wrapped up in that, and it becomes a problem because you're ruminating on this negative thinking and emotion here. All right, so again, when you look at these interpersonal examples here, like my friends should be understanding. Well, if they're not understanding, and you've tried every different way to get someone to understand, at some point you just have to accept the fact that person doesn't understand, and then decide what that means for that relationship. That's how it is. There's no sense in dwelling on these kinds of things, right? So this can lead to these three troublesome consequences. Unhappiness about an ideal that's seldom satisfied. So again, it should be this, and it's not that. Then you're simply going to be unhappy, because the ideal that you want, right, isn't going to happen. That's seldom satisfied, so you're going to be unhappy. You can end up complaining without acting, and that's going to keep you from, right, changing unsatisfying conditions. So in other words, you just kind of continually spin in this problem, or soak in it. That might be another way of looking, better way. You just sit there and kind of soak in this unhappiness and just complaining, but you're not doing anything. That's the problem. It keeps you in stasis, and it keeps you ruminating, and it keeps you emotionally in a negative place. And all of those things, debilitative emotion can have many health effects on you as well. All right. So a fallacy of overgeneralization. We have talked about generalization some before, like static evaluation. When you say someone is a certain way and it just says they're static, they're that way, that's a type. We talked about stereotypes. Those are overgeneralizations. So we talk about two types where we base a belief on a limited amount of evidence, right? Some friend I forgot my best friend's birthday. Okay, so maybe you know that this person, it's important to them to recognize their birthday. Maybe you know that, and you still forgot it. You know, it's okay. That does not determine how good a friend you are if you have forgotten that one thing. All right. I recently forgot someone in my family's anniversary, a close person, my daughter, and actually I got confused about the date, but anyway, it was for a year ago. It was something she said, and with all my fatigue and stress and all that, yeah, I just got it wrong. But she forgives me, you know. It was important. And you know, while I chided myself briefly, I still moved on, right? Because first of all, it was said and done, and she understood. All right. And also when we exaggerate shortcomings, you're always late. Again, that's what we call static evaluation. And that is a type of this fallacy of overgeneralization, right? Fallacy of causation is, and we've talked about this, but we didn't name it. Now we're going to name it. The irrational belief that emotions are caused by other people rather than your own self-talk. In other words, you can, first of all, right, become overly cautious about communicating because you don't want to cause any pain to someone else or inconvenience to other. You don't cause someone's inconvenience. You don't cause someone's pain. All right. If I said I was going to do something for someone in my family, and then I forget or I get too busy and I don't get it done, right? And that person feels hurt. I didn't cause the hurt. That doesn't mean I have no culpability, by the way. I do have responsibility in the relationship, and I probably know that's going to hurt this person's feelings. So I'm going to probably feel bad, and I need to address the issue. But the act itself, again, doesn't cause it. It's what this person believes that relationship is supposed to be, right? Sorry. So this goes back to what we were saying earlier, right? People don't cause what we feel, and we don't cause what other people feel. Does that mean, if we go back to the cheating idea in the marriage, does that mean that person who cheated has no culpability, no blame in affecting that relationship? Well, of course not. Of course they have culpability. Of course they have that in that relationship. If that relationship was understood to be, right, and was communicated with, that this is supposed to be a monogamous relationship and how important that is, and these parties have expressed that, and then this person cheats, they do have culpability, but it's not the act, okay? It's what you believe about the act. It's what you believe about the act within the context of that relationship. And the reason why it's important to separate this, again, is because we won't move forward, right? We won't move forward. We need to have, we'll have emotional responses, but we need to learn to express that, which we'll be talking about. Fallacy of helplessness is the belief that satisfaction in life is determined by forces beyond our control, right? There are some things we can't control, like right now in this pandemic, there are some things we can't control. But we are not helpless, right? There are things that we can do. So, right, and we adapt, and we're dealing with it, and we have emotions about it. But if we just ruminate and think about, well, I can't do anything. I can't go to my classes now, or I can't, you know, being at my age and I'm high risk, it's like I haven't been out of the house except in the yard for going on 3 weeks now. So I don't like it. One day I just went out and I started my car and I just sat there for a little while because I thought, man, I really didn't realize how much I like to just go somewhere. So usually I'm saying, man, how many errands do I have, right? So, but we're not helpless. We're not helpless, right? And as I said before, we always have choices. Every single day we have choices. So you don't have to, if you dwell on this, the forces beyond our control are determining our every success, and you know, then that's an issue. We're not helpless, okay? So just remember that, okay? fallacy of catastrophic expectations. This is kind of what we used to call a long time ago Murphy's Law, right? It operates on the assumption that if something bad can happen, it definitely will, right? Here's examples that you have, right? If I speak up in order to try to resolve a conflict, things will probably get worse, or somebody will think bad of me, or right, or it will cost me. There'll be some kind of consequence for it that I don't, if I invite them to the party, they probably won't come. So what's the point? This is where I get Eeyore. I should have gotten that book out. I might share some of those quotes from Eeyore's little instruction book for life, because he does tend to be filled with the fallacy of catastrophic expectations, so right, if you lose your tail, it's going to get worse because somebody's going to have to put it back on. It's going to hurt. Okay, so anyway, those are the fallacies. Okay, and now we want to look at how, again, a little more deeply about managing and developing skills in managing emotion. All right, so this is on page 5. And again, irrational thinking. There's nothing wrong with emotion. I want to make that clear. Emotions are an important part of our lives. It's, we are a whole self, and we all function together. Our biology, our emotions, our minds, if you're a person of faith, our soul, right? This is all wrapped together. It's not like they're separated from each other. It's more about learning how to manage the emotion, not deny the emotion, right? So rational thinking about emotions, about how you feel, can lead usually, right, to more constructive communication. The reason it says it can lead is because sometimes those emotions are so intense, right, that you may have to wait in order to be constructive in communication. That's really kind of why it says it can lead. All right, so we're going to look at how we can be more effective. So in developing skills, first, we need to look at minimizing those debilitative emotions. So we want to look at a few things that you can do in order to do that, to have a more effective communication about our emotion, and also that will affect our relationships in a better way as well. All right, so you can minimize debilitative emotions that you're experiencing by using some or all of the following, depending on what might work for you at the time. First, you do want to monitor your emotional reactions and recognize them for what they are, all right? Expand and use more emotional vocabulary, right? Make sure you can find the most precise words that you can to describe what you're feeling, all right? To yourself first. I mean, you have to have that self-talk with you. Be aware too, and sometimes it can be more complicated to do this. So, and other times it's simple. But know what the activating event was that produced this emotional response in you. Note it, and realize it, and then you're actually going to try to figure out how to talk more rationally to yourself about what you're feeling. So record that self-talk, that intrapersonal feedback to yourself. It can mean writing it down. It doesn't have to be writing it down. Sometimes that helps people to do that. So if that helps, do that. But recognize that link between the activating event and the emotions you're feeling. That's important. And again, sometimes it's easy, okay? Oh, you cheated on me. That's pretty clear. That's pretty easy. If you have that belief in monogamous relationships, hey, right? That's easy to put together. But sometimes, I don't know, it's something more subtle that somebody said. It's something, or it's a combination of several things that has happened. And it could even be, again, the pandemic, I think, might cause people to have some feelings that they're really not quite sure what they're feeling. So I think note the activating event, all right, because that can help you understand better what you're feeling and why you're feeling that way, because you want to look at that link between your thinking and your feelings. That's important. That's something you need to learn to do if you can't do it yet. You know, for me, it happens, it's harder in certain kinds of situations and can take a little more time and sometimes a little bit of distance. All right. Reappraise your irrational beliefs. Do you have some fallacies that you're operating under, right? So look at those fallacies and say, wait a minute, am I, you know, is this something I'm doing right now? Oh, wow. That's detrimental, right? So learn those, and take a look at them. You can also talk yourself out of feeling bad. You can do that. Different people have different ways of doing that. Again, it's not about denying emotion. But it's about minimizing those debilitative emotions because you're trying to put them in perspective, right? You know, give yourself some self-talk that says, yeah, but, you know, I can do this, right? I'm good at this, and I'm trying. I mean, the effort, I put a lot of effort into this, and, you know, just whatever you can do to give yourself some, you know, ego boosters in an honest way to yourself. Ruminate. Okay, we've looked at ruminate as a bad word, right? But ruminating on the negative is what we don't want to do. But you can ruminate on the positive. Spend some actual time, some you know, longer periods of time ruminating about those positive things that you have in your life, because we all have something that we do hold on to, something in our environment, our personal selves, in our world, right, that are positive, and hold on to that, right? And ruminate on it, reflect on it, talk about it to other people too. That can help too. But ruminate on it being positive, and that's going to maximize its ability, what you're feeling, to be more facilitated, right? All right, next we want to use some guidelines for effectively expressing emotions, and I'm going to go more into this with the exercise that we'll do. You'd be surprised at some of the habits that we have that are poor habits for effectively communicating emotion. Again, with many other things that we've talked about in this semester, we do tend to take shortcuts as human beings, and don't forget, communication does take time and focused effort, right, to communicate effectively. All right, so you want to again be aware of what you're feeling, right? Be able to specify emotion or emotions, right? Be specific, okay? Identify any physiological changes and nonverbal behavior that you have that helps you to understand what you're feeling, right? They can signal to you and help you to self-monitor your emotions, right? And it's important to recognize if you've got multiple feelings when necessary. I mean, there is no doubt people have multiple feelings. I know that mine can change. You know, I can be all right for a whole day, and then something is said, and I would say it's something that reminds me of a loss, of not just what I've lost, but what all of us have lost, at least temporarily, or some of us permanently, if you've lost a loved one. Something that will kind of come out of nowhere and just really arouse those emotions. But again, we have maybe many things. We may feel grief. We may feel irritation or annoyance and anger. We may feel a tremendous love. We may feel patriotism. We may feel compassion. These, you know, and all these things can be happening at once. So when you have multiple feelings and in a specific situation with a specific relationship, you need to express those. You want to recognize the multiple feelings, the different ones, all of those precise feelings, because yes, you can feel multiple things at the same time. If I'm talking to this person in this hypothetical marriage of someone that cheated, then I'm going to need to share things like, I'm disappointed, right? Because that's different than feeling betrayed and feeling angry and feeling sad and lonely. I mean, there's so many emotions you might have in a situation like that. And each one is different and each one's important. Okay? All right. So we also want to recognize the difference. Again, this is kind of just, I don't know, synthesizing things we've been talking about. Recognize that difference between feeling, talking, and acting, right? That we've already been talking about. And sometimes acting out our feelings, and actually there's been discussion in different ways about this, that we talk about venting, and we talk about, punching a punching bag when we're angry, and some scholars will say that actually increases the anger, and other people will say it releases it. I think that when something works, though, for you. So I think it can vary between people as far as that goes. All right, on page 6, these are some things that you want to keep in mind, some more guidelines when you express emotion. Don't use emotionally counterfeit statements, okay? Many of us do this, and I can still fall into this trap, right? But if you say the words "I feel," there needs to be an actual emotion after that. I feel angry, I feel disturbed, I feel betrayed, I feel disappointed, I feel happy, I feel silly, I feel whatever, right? So if you say something like what's in your example here, I feel we've been seeing too much of each other, okay, that doesn't state emotion, okay? You have not stated an emotion. The speaker has not stated an emotion that he or she is feeling, all right? You would have to include something, an emotion after that, instead of I feel we've been seeing too much. We've been seeing too much of each other is a thought that's being expressed. If you say, I feel restricted, no, that might not be as better. I feel, we're going to talk about metaphors, because a metaphor is an okay thing to use. I feel suffocated, right? When I see you this much time, again, be specific, 7 days a week, okay? And I don't get to see other friends, right? But you've got to say something about what you're actually feeling. I feel lonely. I feel isolated from my friends. I feel isolated. Okay. All right. So, but seeing too much of each other is a thought. We're seeing too much of each other, right? As a result of that, I feel, right, lonely because I'm not with my friends. Something like that. Okay. Just because you use the word feel does not mean you've expressed emotion. You have to actually label the emotion. Label the emotion. Okay. Otherwise, it's counterfeit. It sounds like you're expressing emotion, but you're being indirect. You're not saying it directly, which again, in our culture, that's important to us. Don't minimize your emotion. We talk about this with powerless language. All right, I'm a little angry. I'm a little disappointed. I'm kind of worried. He says I'm worried, I'm angry, I'm disappointed, right? So we're coming back to that idea. Don't send coded messages. Don't be indirect. I think that, again, when we look kind of universally, again, this is not true of everybody, but generally that males and females differ on this, and that there are more females that might send a coded message, dropping hints, trying to get somebody to get the clue that you're angry, let's say, so you don't go bang the pots and pans around in the kitchen, is coded. I mean, don't be coded. Say what you mean. And again, females have a tendency in our culture to just not be direct. Be direct. We think we're safe. I don't know. It might have something to do with trying to keep some harmony by not coming directly out and just saying what we think and feel and why. All right. So no coded messages. Because again, that just is ambiguity. Guess what? The other people are not going to get it. That's usually what happens. If you go bang the pots and pans in the kitchen or something similar, that is not expressing your emotion to someone directly, and so that they understand clearly what you're feeling and why, and how they can change their behavior and how they can contribute in some way to making things better in the relationship. All right. this goes back, the next one about considering when and where to express your feelings, to when, all the way to the beginning of the semester when we talked about choosing channels. We choose the right time, the right place. It needs to be constructive. There don't need to be distractions. There needs to be less intensity of emotion. You need to kind of wait if you can. Sometimes you can't. But if you can plan to express this emotion the most beneficial way, then you want to choose a time and a place where you can actually talk about it more calmly. Again, so if you go back to this proverbial marriage with the cheating problem, you're not going to obviously need to talk about it at some noisy restaurant, like Cracker Barrel over breakfast or something. I mean, or a sports bar or something. I mean, it's ridiculous, right? So, but you got to think about it, because that's going to make it more effective. Accept responsibility for your feelings. So we're going back to I language, and we'll keep coming back to I language, right? State the activating event. This is what we did with a perception check, right? State the event, okay? Again, you left this morning without saying a word to me, all right? I feel angry when you do that. It could be, I feel confused when you do that, right? You don't always have to say, I feel, I feel confused when you don't talk to me in the morning before you leave. That works too, okay? So you just want to make sure those components are there, that you state what the raw data is, the activating event, the behavior, the situation, what was done, what was said, what was not said, etc. And how you felt, right? Okay. And then use a metaphor or simile. That can help, right? These are, a metaphor is an implicit comparison between two things that are not the same, to help illustrate some qualities about it. And a simile is implicit, using like or as, right? So again, I thought I did well on the math test, but it was the lowest grade I've received so far. It was like hitting a brick wall, right? That would not be comfortable. I'm pretty sure I've never hit a brick wall, but I think it would hurt and be shocking, okay? So you can start off with a metaphor or a simile. You don't have to have an actual emotion to start with this, but you are still going to have to continue and explain and label those emotions. So it's a way in to get started, especially if you're trying to figure out exactly what you're feeling. Sometimes that can help, right? Okay. All right, so we're going to stop there with that, and when we get ready for the exercise, I'll be explaining more to you about what I'm looking for as far as emotionally expressing your emotion. Sorry, not emotionally expressing. So I will see you soon.